So I've been going down this rabbit hole on the internet. It's called natalism, and it's essentially this subreddit on the internet where it's a philosophy that's so strange and so interesting that I figure I'll just make a video on it. Now, antinatalism is essentially, you know, people who think that it's immoral to give birth, right? People that think that giving birth is, people who think that having children is unethical. Now, when I first stumbled across this subreddit, I was thinking to myself, how could a bunch of people be so stupid, so up their ass, and so self-absorbed to contribute to such a strange and just evil ideology? What the fuck is up with these guys? What's up with these people? What's up with these people? And antinatalism has been around for a very, very long time, and it goes beyond this little subreddit of people. It's not a mainstream ideology at all, but it's been around forever. Now, if you want to be open to somebody else's point of view, you want to throw away all of your preconceived notions straight out the window. Because those notions that you hold onto are going to give you a sense of bias, and it's just going to, you're not going to be really open to what these people have to say, despite it being really strange and a really odd philosophy. Fuck it, I'm ready to hear these people out. I'm ready to hear what they got to say, and let's hear what they got to say, man. Let's be open to what they got to say. So the people here claim that bringing children into this world is essentially bringing birth to suffering, because essentially life is suffering. There's so much shit going on, stuff like torture, concentration camps, and rape and violence and war. God hate us all. These are all valid points. You can kind of sympathize with them. You can kind of understand them. Especially if you're a really cynical person like I am, it kind of makes a little sense. The poster boy of this ideology, his name is called Arthur Schopenhauer, and he came up with the idea to say that, life is all suffering, and he apparently said that life is all suffering, and the negatives outweigh the positives. And this was back in, I think, the 19th century, and this guy, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Tekken and the character Heihachi Mishima, but if you can kind of connect the dots here and kind of... So this guy himself, Arthur Schopenhauer, he himself is not really a cynic. In fact, he lived a pretty decent life. People go through stuff in their life, but, unless it's really tragic and really fucks up like a big portion of your life, like your family passing away in front of you, I think this guy, we can assume that he lived a pretty normal, decent life. So he's not a cynic, and I've read this up. He's not a cynic. He's not a pessimist. He just believes that life is all suffering, and I think the only way to sort of break free from that suffering is to be positive, and that time frame of positivity is that little break period of suffering. So we're suffering, and positivity somehow gives us a break from suffering. Now, some of you may be wondering, isn't that what Buddhism is all about? Life is suffering, achieve nirvana. And essentially, Buddhism is kind of the same thing. The difference between the Buddhists and the antinatalists is that the Buddhists are not pessimists, and they actually do something about their cause. So obviously they train their whole lives to be monks, to sort of overcome the suffering, and eventually that monk training pays off into a life, afterlife worth of nirvana. Antinatalists, they're very pessimistic. They see, there's really nothing good about life. It's mostly suffering. There's some you can take away. There's some stuff that happens that's for good, but it's mostly suffering. So this guy in India apparently sued his own parents for giving birth to him. Now, I don't know about you, man, but this feels like some kind of 200 IQ power move. I don't think anything like this has even been done before in the history of humanity. Uh, Again, you can call this guy an asshole or a douche, but I'm assuming he didn't make some money out of this. I mean, betray your family for this cause. I mean, that's a dedicated anti-natalist. This guy's based. I like him. So yeah, apparently antinatalism is actually quite big in India, or at least bigger in these countries than compared to the rich Western countries. And I think the reason why is that you see places like India and there's a lot of suffering going around. There's a lot of bad stuff going around, man. There's people on this lower caste, these little moms, and these these aunties, and they have like 7 kids, and the quality of life is so fucking horrendous. It's hard to even imagine what they must be going through on a daily basis. I see why people from that part of the world would believe or get into an ideology to get into a philosophy like this, as wretched as it is. Antinatalism will never be mainstream. It will never have mainstream appeal. Because most people in the mainstream will look at this and just kind of brush it away in an instant. Are you going to tell all 8 billion people in the whole world to not have kids? I don't think that a lot of antinatalists, they don't think like that. They think, I wish some people should just not have some kids, man. I wish people who are in the worst condition possible I just want them to not have 7, 8 kids, And obviously they themselves don't believe in having children either. So they're pretty dedicated to this ideology. And of course you have stuff like rape and unplanned pregnancies, and that's a legit immoral way to give birth. So they have a point there, stuff like that, giving birth like that, especially in a place where there's no abortion. I can totally understand it. And people watching, they're going to be like, oh dude, you're a satanic, you're a Satanist. This is some Satanist bullshit that you're trying to bring up. I don't think any of these people are evil. I myself do not believe in this ideology, although I can really sympathize with them. I can really sympathize with some of these darker, more obscure ideologies, because I don't know why, but they're just they kind of tell the truth in a very honest way, and I can kind of respect that. There are no kids in non-existence that are sad and feeling deprived because they don't exist. The existing can feel deprivation. If you want to expand happiness, take care of the already existing or adopt. So yeah, non-existence. This is basically a different universe where people just don't exist. Obviously, kids in non-existence, they aren't born yet. So that's just what he's trying to say here. And I guess you can kind of understand, man. There's people that are not born yet really don't have to go through anything, they're just chilling, man. They're just fucking chilling in the womb or whatever. I do think the negatives outweigh the positives in life. Pleasure is kind of weird too, because it leads to too much suffering. Let's say, for example, you end up eating too much candy. That's also a valid point, If you're eating junk food all day and you're playing video games all day, you're living a pretty relaxed life, an enjoyable life. But in the end, you're miserable. And to everybody on the outside, you're a real miserable person, even if you sort of live in this constant, stimulation of the brain, this constant, never-ending stimulation of happiness and joy. If you do drugs all the time, drugs make you feel good. But eventually, they're going to fuck up your body big time, So I guess this guy's talking about, pain and suffering and how even pleasure can cause suffering. I don't want to turn anybody into an antinatalist, but I want people to sort of be open to these more obscure views, sort of try to understand them. I don't want to turn anybody else into an antinatalist. If I did turn you into an antinatalist, good for you, I guess. But don't go berating your parents for making you born, for why did you give birth to me, yada yada. Don't go doing that, you know. And a lot of antinatalists do believe that, you know, they kind of have this sort of, they sort of hold this sort of vitriol towards their parents for giving birth to them without consent, especially if they have parents, and I'm guessing mostly or all of them, they have parents that kind of they're not really like fit to take care of the children. You know, they're kind of in this really bad situation, and they just decided to have kids for whatever reason. You know, I apologize if this video just seems all over the place. You know, my style is more of the stream of conscious style, more improvisational style, rather than reading from like a script. So, you know, I apologize if you don't like my style of videos, but if you do like it, consider subscribing.